Recovery Hour. I'm Bob Sheritz, and I'd like to wish everyone a happy Monday. What a beautiful day it is. You know, I'm glad that that the fires didn't come down into our hometown here. You know, I want to give a big shout out to all the people that were out there busting their butts, fighting those fires, man. Without those first responders and the firefighters and all the people doing that amazing job to keep us safe, I don't know what the heck we would do. You know, we get fires every year around here, but when it hits, I'm just reminded of the gratitude that I have for the people that are really out there keeping us safe. And so I want to say a big thank you to anybody who's been out there doing that. And still, you know, there's still a lot of work to do on that Saddle Ridge fire. And, you know, we're praying for those folks over the hill that have been put in much bigger danger than we've been put in. And so, you know, as we go into this week, you know, it can be easy for us to get grateful. I try to remind everyone of that every Monday. You know, Monday gets a bad rap, and it doesn't have to. There are, you know, traditionally we've sat and go, oh my God, Monday, I got this big week in front of me and all this stuff to do. And as I'm looking at my calendar and you know, can feel a little bit overwhelmed, I like to remind everyone to take a minute every Monday at noon. Hopefully you've done it before now. Stop everything you're doing. Take a deep breath. If you're outside, put your face up to that beautiful sunshine and feel that breeze blowing, and be reminded of all the wonderful things that you get to experience on this Monday throughout this big, beautiful week, right? And it's easy to get grateful when we have an experience like last week with the fires and the wind, to think how blessed we are that we are able to sit here today and just be grateful for all of the things that we have in our lives, and especially all of the people that we have in our lives. Nothing is more important than the person that's sitting right in front of you, and so be grateful for those relationships. If you are struggling in your relationships, if you have loved ones or family members, or you yourself are struggling or suffering from addiction or mental health issues, please give us a call. Remember that asking for help is the first step. The Way Out Recovery's phone number is 661-296-4444. Again, that's 296-4444. Come on by and drop by and pay us a visit. We are at 28118 Bouquet Canyon Road on the corner of Plum and Bouquet. We love when we get visitors that drop in. Most of the time, one of us has the coffee going, and so drop on by and tell us how you're doing. And if we can help, we would love to help. You know, if you or someone you love is struggling, please drop by or give us a call and let us know how we can help. You can also go to our website, thewayoutrocoveryscv.com, and you can submit for a free confidential assessment. Or you can put on a message on there, a private message on there, and I will respond. You can always send me an email, bob@thewayoutrocoveryscv.com, and I will respond as quickly as I possibly can to those emails and requests. But remember that asking for help is the first step. We have a real incredible show for you today. If you're listening to us today, you're listening to us on 98.1 FM or AM 1220. You can always access these shows on Monday live on KHTS Radio Facebook page or the Way Out Recovery SCV Facebook page, or you can always go to our website and get previous podcasts, thewayoutrocoveryscv.com, or you can go to hometownstation.com. And don't forget to download the free KHTS app so that you can get news, radio, weather, updates, and great music and cool shows like this all the time on your smart device or tablet. So remember, KHTS app is free. Go ahead and download that now. And our show today, you know, I have been, it's funny, I've been working in drug treatment for a long time, for almost 15 years now. And I gave that little chuckle because I was going to say I've been dealing with drugs my entire life, right? Like I've had experience when it comes to either personally using or struggling with addiction or family addiction. I come from a family where there is mental health and substance abuse issues. And so in one form or another, I've experienced that my entire life. And one of the things that, so addiction and drug use and the drug trends and what used to be is different nowadays. Today we're going to look at current trends and the changing face of addiction. I have a special guest with me today. Her name is Michelle Field. Hi, Michelle. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bob.
And Michelle is going to tell us a little bit about her story and her experience, because Michelle is really more of commonly what we are seeing in the new changing face of addiction. A mom, a wife, not a troubled teen, not a gang member, not a whatever we used to label drug addiction as. Michelle's going to tell us her story so that we can see a more common look at what the changing face of addiction looks like with really the flood. I was going to say the advent, but prescription medications have been around for a long time. But really the flood of prescription medications 20 or 25 years ago when doctors started handing it out like candy, and that is not a criticism on doctors. I'm not ever going to do that. Doctors have a heck of a job, right? But we live in a world today where our medical advances have made such good drugs that we've passed them out like candy, and we've put ourselves in a pickle today where we're really have a nation that's addicted to prescription medications. And so the changing face of addiction is, addicts don't look like what they used to look like. No. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today when we come back, and we're going to have an incredible show for you. I was going to wait to drop the bomb, but I'm going to do it now. I was going to wait till after you tell your story, and then also say Michelle is also one of our primary counselors over at The Way Out. And so we are going to talk about what your specialty is, which is teen treatment. And what that looks like, because in today's world of addiction and drugs being different than it used to be, the message that we are giving teenagers, and you and I make a heck of a team when we're working with the entire families, is different than it used to be.
Right.
And so we're going to talk about that as well. So stay tuned if you are listening right now. If you have friends who are not listening, call them up and tell them to listen to the show, because it's going to be a great one. I'm Bob Sheritz. This is the Way Out Recovery Hour. We'll be back in a minute.
Pumpkins are back in Santa Clarita, a short ride up Bouquet Canyon. It's Gilchrist Farms Harvest Festival and Pumpkin Patch, with pumpkins and more pumpkins. Open from 9 till 6 daily in October, the festival is full of pony rides, farm animals, live entertainment, farm crafts, archery, and pig races. Book your professional photo session in the Pumpkin Patch. Learn how to milk a goat, gather eggs, and pick your perfect Halloween pumpkin. Nostalgia return to Santa Clarita at Gilchrist Farm. That's GilchristFarm.com.
We all know sometimes people lose their way. If you or someone you know is struggling with addiction, the Way Out Recovery SCV may have the answers you've been waiting for. The Way Out is the premier intensive outpatient treatment center serving Santa Clarita. Asking for help is the first step. Call The Way Out today, 661-296-4444. That's 296-4444 for a private free assessment. The Way Out is an accredited, affordable outpatient program that accepts most insurance. Call us at 661-296-4444 or check us out online at thewayOutRecoveryscv.com. Quit battling with yourself. Ask The Way Out for help today.
Halloween at Real Life Church is the largest free family-friendly Halloween event in Santa Clarita. Their all-new experience will feature endless indoor trick-or-treat booths filled with candy, balloon artists, face painting, lots of treat vendors, animals of all shapes and sizes, and oh yes, a real live giraffe. Discover why thousands of families make this a tradition every year. The fun all happens Friday, October 25th from 5:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. at Real Life Church. Tickets are free and can be redeemed online at reallifechurch.org.
Hometown. Your hometown station.
I got no excuses.
Welcome back to the Way Out Recovery Hour. I'm Bob Sheritz, and if you are just joining us, we got a heck of a show coming up for you. And if you're just joining us, you're also listening to us on FM 98.1, AM 1220, or don't forget to download the free KHTS app. Welcome back to the show for anybody who's been listening or anybody who's just joining us. We are going to talk about, addiction. So first of all, let me welcome my guest, Michelle Field. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Bob. Thank you very much for having me.
So it's neat. You and I get to work together, and we get to work together with families of teenagers who are starting to do drugs or they're facing troubles, and we get to help heal those families.
Yes.
What's cool about us working together also is that we're both right around the same age. Mm-hmm. And so when we talk about the history of drugs, we can talk about what like advertisement on TV used to be around smoking cigarettes or drinking or whatever. And we're the same era. So we get that. Right. But also, drug addiction itself and drugs and drug use doesn't look like what it used to look like.
Not at all.
I mean, in some ways it does. I know that there's more drugs now than there used to be, which when I first started saying that was a little bit of a surprise to me because there were lots of drugs back then when I was doing them as well. But it's hard for me to judge because everybody I knew did drugs, right? But I know that there are more drugs out there today. I know that the drugs that are out there today are stronger than they've ever been. I know that the drugs that are out there are more available than they've ever been. And so we're in a whole different world when it comes to drug use today. That being said, I also know that we're in a world where treatment is more accessible and available to everyone. And treatment is better than it's ever been and more effective than it's ever been. And it has to be because the face of addiction doesn't look like what it used to look like. So let me ask you a question. When you grew up, what did you think a drug addict looked like? Or maybe what did a drug addict look like?
Well, when I grew up, my image of a drug addict was the homeless person. On one hand, I would see on the street. At the same time, growing up, I wasn't sure, but I knew that my parents kind of had issues, but I wouldn't call them like homeless people. So my view basically was the person who was walking the streets barefoot, who had mental illness and drug and alcohol problems. And that was my image of it. Growing up, I grew up with my mother was an alcoholic and addict, and so was my father.
When you let me, and I'm going to jump in as you're talking about your story. When you say my mother was an alcoholic and an addict, what kind of drugs was mom taking?
Valium.
Okay, so just to sort of state to the changing face, right? Is that those were things that almost weren't even talked about, but they kind of were a little bit. So Mother's Little Helper, right?
Yes, exactly.
A little plug for the Rolling Stones, as if they need a plug from us, right?
Right.
A little plug for the Rolling Stones. Mother's Little Helper was Valium back then was like the Xanax of today, right?
Yes, exactly.
And so would you have called, you just knew mom had a problem, would you have sort of labeled her as a drug addict back then? Or what was the view of that? Did you guys talk about it?
No. No, it was just a chaotic mess. I was the parent growing up of my brother and my mother. And my father was in and out, and the fighting and the beating up and all that. And I just had to be the person that she would throw the wine bottle at and say, I can't get it open, or here, I can't get my pills open. And she would even give me Valium when I had ear infections to get me to go to sleep.
So it was considered probably in her day as sort of like a miracle drug,
yes,
right?
Yes.
Yeah, and because it was really before, or maybe right at the time of like a better world through chemistry, or
yes,
something was the saying
right,
of the day, right? And so, man, we can make all these wonderful medications that can heal all these people, and that's the viewpoint, right? So let's make a bazillion of them and pass them out
yes,
for everything, right? And Valium was the drug of the day.
Yes.
It's an anti-anxiety medication,
right,
is one of its uses, right? And so we all feel a little bit anxious, and in that era, I think it really set us up for where we are at today. Is, what did we do before that, right? When I felt a little anxious, I had to use some sort of tools to not feel so anxious anymore. So I had to get out and exercise, or I had to talk about my problems, or I had to resolve the issues that I'm anxious about. And then along comes this thing where I don't have to do any of that stuff.
Nope.
Just take a pill and right?
Exactly. The aha moment.
And so clarification on a couple of things. When you said I was the parent, what do you mean by that?
That means that I was the grown-up in the house. I had to make sure everything...
Not physically, though. How old are we talking about? You were a kid, right?
I was 7. My brother was born, so about 7.
7, 8 years old.
Yeah.
This is, and I want to say something about this, because we have a term for that called parentification, right?
Yes.
And it's one of the things that I don't necessarily know that people think about when they think about drug addiction. We think about overdoses, and we think about legal troubles, and we think about relationship troubles, but we don't oftentimes think about the kids that are sitting in the middle of sort of normally functioning families, and it's so dysfunctional inside of that house that the children take on the roles as the adults.
Yes.
So I'm 8 years old and I'm the adult in the house.
Yes, and you have to live 2 separate lives. You're at home, you're the parent, and then you have to go to school and act like the perfect kid, and everything's going good, and you're normal, as normal as you can be.
Why do I have to act like the perfect kid when I go to school?
Because it was all about image in my house. We had to appear like the perfect family. So I had to get the good grades, and I had to go to school, and I never felt like I fit in because I felt like I was so much older, Yeah. And then I would go home, and then, my mom would be crying and drunk and calling people on the phone, and the police would be there. The police knew us by name. It was just this 2 worlds that we had. And then she left, and then I was just with my dad and my brother, and then it was really bad.
Do you know, we use this word a lot, but the word stigma, right? Stigma is essentially, I have this image of something that it's bad, and so we try to steer away from it and not talk about it, right?
Right.
We live in a world today where it's better than it used to be.
Oh, yeah.
But we still, drug and alcohol and mental health issues are absolutely by far the biggest, most wide-reaching and pervasive issue on the planet.
Yeah.
But it's one of the things, or some of the things, that we talk the least about, right?
Absolutely.
Like, people still don't want to go there.
No.
And so stigma is one of the biggest obstacles for treatment, right? So it kind of looks like this. If I don't provide a safe place for someone to ask for help, they're not going to ask for help.
That's right.
If I think I'm going to get in trouble, or I think, I'm going to get yelled at, or I'm going to get shamed, or I'm going to get called stupid, or those people, or whatever, then I'm not going to ask for help, because I don't want to hear that, right?
Yeah, and for me, asking for help meant it was going to a jail. I thought rehab was jail.
And it was 10 times. So the point of me saying that is that let's rewind back to the 70s.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
It was way worse back then.
Yes. Yes, and it was way worse. And I don't think growing up, there was no place for kids to talk. No one talked. They just kept their secrets inside.
Right.
There was nobody to talk to. And I think that stemmed a lot of my problems and why I love working with teens today, because to give them a safe place to talk about what's going on.
Well, and even at, by the time so a kid in that situation right there, by the time they're a teenager, that's a lot of the, a lot of the teens that we see as we start to talk to them and unravel what's going on in their lives, they will talk about their past traumas.
Yes.
They'll talk about the cops coming to the house,
Yes.
the fights in the house, the drug use in the house, the stuff.
The abuse.
Yeah, the siblings who are addicts, and things like that. And so, so when they're teenagers, they can talk about it. But what we don't often times ask is the 6, 7, 8-year-old.
Absolutely.
Right? Because, and at 6, 7, 8, even, as you're talking, I'm like I get it, like that's my house too, right?
Right.
But I didn't, if you would have even provided a safe place for me to talk at 6, 7, 8 years old, I wouldn't have had the words for it.
Right.
Yeah. We need to get in there and teach younger kids how to express the way that they're feeling and what's going on inside of their life. And so let me guess. So you grow up, mom and dad are both using?
Yes, they are.
As when you were a kid. So mom's using drugs and drinking, dad's an alcoholic, drugs too?
No drugs, but a rageaholic.
Okay. So you got alcohol on top of violence.
Right.
Right? Or vice versa, right? And unpredictability.
Exactly.
For me, I think that's the worst thing about, there was some stuff going on inside of our house, but there didn't need to be because the fear that we lived under all the time because of the unpredictability was enough. Yes. I don't know what that does to the inside of a kid, but to have all of those stress hormones running all the time in your system, it's got to screw you up.
Oh,
right?
yeah. I would be so nervous. Before my dad got home, I'd have to clean the house 3 times to make sure so no trouble would start. And I'd lay in bed waiting and hear if he would, throw something or get mad or if he'd be okay, you know. So I was always stressed out, always.
So you got mom, dad, and then you have siblings?
Yes. I have and I want to talk about the stress real quick, is that when I was 12 years old, I was diagnosed with an ulcer. And the doctor said he had never seen an ulcer so large in a child before. Yeah. But that just goes to show the stress I held in my stomach as a little kid.
So I talk a lot about this. And I suppose the disclaimer to it is I'm not a doctor.
Yeah, I'm not a doctor.
But I've read a lot of books or something, and I'm fascinated by addiction and the way that it works. And one of the key components that drives addiction and creates addiction is when the chemicals that create stress in our bodies are prevalent enough in our system to start causing that kind of damage. Yes. Like I'm getting ulcers and I'm getting stuff at 12 years old. I'm
passing
getting an ulcer.
out in school. Yeah, that's
from stress hormones running rampantly through the system. If a person is in that state right there and you introduce drugs to them, the addiction is born right there.
Right.
And so you have older or brother siblings?
I have a younger brother who's 7 years younger, and he started doing drugs at 11. Started smoking marijuana, which then... So
your body's reaction to it was to start giving you physical problems.
Yes.
I'm going to have ulcers, and I'm going to...
Yes.
And I'm going to clean up so dad doesn't freak out. I'm going to do all this sort of codependent stuff.
I used to have to hide my brother's report card so he wouldn't freak out because he did very poorly in school.
So covering up for your brother.
Yes.
Right, which is another sort of sign of codependency as well.
Yes.
And what I'm trying to, so I'm painting a picture of 2 kids growing up in this stressful environment, right? In that stress-filled environment, your brain will do anything that it can to reduce that level of stress. Michelle goes one way with it.
Yes.
I'm going to clean up all the messes. I'm going to have physical problems and give, and it's going to manifest in that.
Right.
And your brother goes the other direction, right? Both of those provide relief from that stress right now, and the brain will do anything it can for the stress. What happened with your brother?
So he just went into a gang and just right away was smoking marijuana. Then he went to PCP, which was his drug of choice. Right. And he was in and out of treatment centers and mental health facilities from 12 on camps. And then at 17, I moved out on my own at 17 with my boyfriend just to get out of that house.
Yeah.
And then I put it all behind me, and I was a big girl, and I, started my life and thought that part of my life's over with.
Yeah.
I don't need to ever do that again.
So I think the next little segment that we're going to get into right now in your story is this. And it's important for our listeners to pay attention because you're going to see that there's such a strong genetic component. Mm-hmm. Growing up in a household like that, if you're sitting here listening to this and you're thinking, God, you have a lot of examples of what not to do. Yes. So 17 years old, I've escaped from that crazy environment. I'm going to go off on my own, and I'm going to do things different than my parents have ever done, right?
Yes, completely.
Because I'm not living that life. I'm escaping from that life.
Yes.
So how does that genetic component of addiction show up in your life even at 17? Did the codependency follow you?
Well, I know that I picked my my husband to be that I lived with was someone I could control.
Okay.
And so it was a safe place. So I was the one that wore the pants of the family.
You got to be in charge.
Yes.
But that was the natural role for you.
Yes.
Because you'd always been the one in charge since, like you said,
Absolutely.
7 years old, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So that was good. And so I'm trying to think. So my brother continued on. He ended up going to prison, and he got clean in prison.
Okay.
So he's now got 10 years.
Oh, God bless, man. That's cool. Yeah, that's cool. I it's cool because I know you, and we work together every day, right? But I didn't know that about your brother.
Yeah.
And maybe you told me that and I wasn't listening or something. But 10 years clean, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's good.
We do because we do recover. Because we do recover.
Yes, we do recover, and he did it, and he did it in prison. So.
Yeah.
So.
So you went. So you thought you had escaped all of that, right?
Yes.
And then later on in life, what happened to you? Because as you're sitting here today, I know you because we're both in recovery. Mm-hmm. So wait a minute, what the heck happened here?
Stories, yeah. So plot changes. Okay, so what happens is that I go off and I have to, just like as I grew up, I have to make everything perfect on the outside. I go on to have a perfect husband, family. Everyone thinks I'm.
Everyone looks good. Everything looks good.
5 kids, doing well. Still had all that stress. Though. I carried that all the way up to here. Yeah. Always looking for something.
Well, that becomes your normal, right?
Yes.
That becomes your normal.
Yes.
Or maybe it always was your normal.
Yes.
If you're born into that.
Yes. So what happened was basically is I hit a point in my life where I was emotionally drained, and I had lost a child, and I had back pain, and so I went to the doctor and just told him I was experiencing back pain. And he said, okay, we'll just give you Vicodin, and we'll give you some Soma, which is a muscle relaxer, and that'll help you.
So you're in the middle of two things. You have back pain. Mm-hmm. So legitimate pain, right. Going to a doctor and saying, look, I have this pain. Mm-hmm. But you also are under the stress of just losing a child.
Right.
So your emotional stress is way up here. Your physical pain is what gets you to the doctor.
Yes.
The doctor just does what they believe will help, right? We live in a world where you have a pain, here's a painkiller.
Exactly.
Right? And so the doctor prescribes you Vicodin.
And Soma.
Which is an opiate. Mm-hmm. And Soma, which is a muscle relaxer.
Which they are changing now and putting it in the benzo.
In a different class. Mm-hmm. They're putting it in a different class so that we know that it's an addictive medication, mm-hmm. right? And so what we're going to do when we come back after this break is we're going to see what happens when when Michelle introduces these two drugs into a life that's filled with stress with a history and a genetic component to all this addiction, right? I'm gonna guess that life dramatically changed after that.
Yes, dramatically.
I'm Bob Sheritz. This is the Way Out Recovery Hour. We'll be back in a minute.
The best live theater can be found right here in the Santa Clarita Valley. The Canyon Theater Guild has been entertaining audiences for decades with top-quality musicals and plays. Located on Main Street in Old Town New Hall, CTG also offers workshops for the young actor in your family. For more information, call the box office at 799-2702 or go online to canyontheater.org.
College of the Canes wants you to pick up a quick, convenient, short-term class this October. Classes available in Canyon Country, Valencia, and online. Take an extra class to explore your interests or to transfer faster to a four-year university. Seats available in astronomy, English, macroeconomics, sociology, wine studies, and more. Not able to get to campus? Take an online class. For a full list of open classes at College of the Canyons, visit canyons.edu/schedule.
Cal DRE 0207-8303.
Don't pay high commission fees to sell your home. Pantheon Realty's $4,900 flat listing fee has taken the Santa Clarita Valley by storm. Their sellers save more than $10,000 over costly percent-based fees. Home sellers, finally, the power is in your hands. Get the absolute best representation for one flat fee, $4,900. Pay nothing until you sell. A free 30-minute consultation can save you thousands. Don't throw money away. Book online at PantheonSCV.com. That's PantheonSCV.com. PantheonSCV.com.
Your hometown station.
As soon as I leave my house in Saugus, I always turn on KHTS for the latest traffic updates.
98.1 FM and AM 1220.
I got no excuses.
Welcome back to the Way Out Recovery Hour. I'm Bob Sheritz. If you are just joining us, please do yourself a favor and go back and watch the podcast of this in a couple of days so you can catch the front end. We've been sitting here talking with Michelle Field, who is one of our primary counselors working with our teenagers over at the Way Out Recovery, and really looking at the face of addiction today. Here's a lady who grew up in a house with many examples of what not to do, right? And I was having a conversation, you and I were having this conversation, or maybe I just mentioned it at the break, is that whenever we talk about growing up in addiction, we want to do that from the perspective of not ever blaming our parents. Mm-hmm. It wasn't their fault, to be able to see the house that we grew up in as a house full of beautiful people with addiction.
Right.
The addiction is what gets everything sideways.
Right.
Right. The people are beautiful and have done the best they can with this disease that we have. Right. And so you grow up in this example of I'm going to stay away from that stuff. And you told me before, like, you tried a little bit when you were a kid, right? Yeah. Smoked a little weed, but it never took hold, right?
No, right.
And so, but then you go through some stuff. You're in a time in your life when there's a lot of stress happening. You've lost a child. You've got some physical ailments going on. You go to the doctor, and the doctor prescribes Vicodin, which is an opiate, and Soma, which is a muscle relaxer. What happened when you took those medications?
I got all the noise stopped.
Right.
It was just peace, and I was just like, I could breathe.
Did it work for your back pain?
I forgot about that. I forgot about back pain. I just cleaned house, and I could take care of kids, and I wasn't depressed, and it was just all that noise in my head finally stopped. That rattling in my body stopped.
Right. And we, as a country, and maybe probably worldwide as well, we're starting to really see the negative effects of all these miracle drugs that we came up with however many years ago. Yeah. We lived in a time where we were inventing all these wonderful medications that were really helping people, but we weren't warning people, or we weren't holding back enough for people not to become addicted.
Right. They're short-term pills. They're only meant for short-term.
And I think it's important for for anybody to understand this is, if you have some sort of an ailment that requires medical attention and medication, by all means, explore the possibility of taking those medications, but be educated.
Yes.
Be informed.
Yes.
Know what you're taking. Get second opinions. See if there are other alternatives before you take those medications,
yes.
because they are so dangerous on the flip side of the reaction that you had. You know, the reaction that we have is exactly what you had. If I'm going through all this stuff, and I love your answer when I asked you about the back pain, I forgot all about the back pain.
Yeah.
Because the emotional pain was so great.
Exactly.
That it went away too. And if your brain is living in a condition where it thinks this stress is going to kill me, and all of a sudden you introduce something into your life that takes it all away, even if it's only for a moment, your brain says, Michelle, keep doing that at all costs.
That's right.
No matter what, you keep doing that. So tell us about the at all costs and no matter what. What happened to your life after that?
Well, I could say for the first 6 months, I had it under control. I was taking it as directed.
It was still working.
It was working. I was taking it as directed. And then pretty soon one wasn't working, so I started introducing 2 at a time. And then I started introducing 3 at a time. And before you know it, my medication was gone before it was time to refill it. So then I had to go find another doctor to prescribe some more. So I had 2 doctors. And I'm like, I was excited because then I have 2 doctors giving me twice as much. That should last me. And then before I knew it, it wasn't lasting me. And I went to 3. So I was up to 7 Vicodins a day. 7 Vicodin at a time, 3 to 4 times a day, and at least 12 or 14 somas. So I was doctor shopping. I was
multiple doctors?
Multiple doctors.
Okay.
At a time when they've come a long way now.
Well, there's a database now that puts them all together, right?
It's called Cures, I believe, and they run it and they can see it. Whereas I had a notebook and I had different names, different birth dates. I was calling in my own prescriptions. I got smart and saw the DEA numbers, and I could call it in and just get small amounts. I was no longer cleaning house. All I was thinking about was when I was getting my next pill. My oldest daughter at the time was driving. She was coming to pick me up. I would call her, and I would just be nodding. And she'd say, "Where are you?" And she'd have to drive around and find me, usually a Taco Bell parking lot or a Vons parking lot. I didn't even know I was there.
So in some regards, your daughter's now taking on the role that you had when you were a kid.
She totally had to.
You know?
She totally had to. And she, in more ways than one, at one point she saw me. I ran out of Vicodin. I took a ton of Soma because I was detoxing. And she took me to the hospital. And what did they do? They gave me Vicodin.
Yeah.
And sent me home. So she was the parent. I mean, whenever I got in a car accident with a brand new truck, I totaled it. She had to pick me up from the hospital when I was driving under the influence.
Well, and I think it's important to know, what I said earlier about not blaming the person, no matter what we grow up in, because what you're telling is an example of, yourself as a person who grew up and did not ever want to be that right there. I have this example, right? Like I don't ever want to be addicted like my mom was addicted. Right. And yet, here goes this beautiful person, right, who's now addicted and is asking your own daughter to do stuff that you probably said, I'll never ask her to do. Right?
Exactly.
It doesn't change the person.
No.
The addiction takes over and grabs the person, right, and makes those decisions.
Yeah, and she really did. She had a lot of resentment about that. We worked through it later after I went into treatment, but she did because at that time I had separated from my husband because he wasn't doing anything, and she had to step up and be the parent to the little ones too. I wasn't present anymore. I was just a person in a corner.
Yeah, and everybody's going to have their different reaction to that, right? And so
yes.
your husband just couldn't deal with it.
No,
right?
He didn't deal with it at all. I'm out.
Right, and your daughter stepped in and took care of you.
Yes,
which it's interesting. There's this balance, this dance of balance that we talk with families about all the time in terms of enabling or not enabling, and that's a hard thing to decipher sometimes because on some level I would say, would it be fair to say that your daughter saved your life? Like she came in there, got you to the hospital, so you didn't, whatever, right?
Absolutely.
And then on the other hand, would it be fair to say that your daughter enabled you?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so where do we find that balance? And
yes.
that's what we try to navigate with our families today that we work with, right?
Yes, exactly.
So at some point, did the doctors start cutting you off? What happens when that happens? So you were able to ride that to the end.
I rode it to the end until I ran out of money.
Okay.
And then I didn't have. And let me say, during this time, my daughter, my youngest daughter, we moved 9 times.
Okay.
In my addiction, 9 times I moved with her into different houses. So my husband cut off all money, ran out of money. And that's when I had to go into treatment. Right. And like you said, I was just this housewife. I didn't know what treatment looked like. I knew what my brother went through as a kid, but...
So what did you thought jail or like lockdown or something, right?
I was so scared. Yes, I was so scared. And...
what was your experience in treatment? Did you have a good experience?
Absolutely wonderful.
Oh, yeah. That's important to hear, too,
mm-hmm.
is that, even though, especially in a time when we hear the stories about some of these, shifty treatment centers and people that work in them, right, that it's important that we don't let that reflect on all treatment.
Right.
Because most places you're having a wonderful, life-changing, in a positive way experience, right?
Yes, and it was during Christmas time too, so it was a interesting transition, and the younger kids really didn't know what was going on. It was just the older kids that would come visit me, and but it was life changing because I worked on things I never worked on.
What
before.
treatment center did you go to?
It was called Eaton Canyon.
Eaton Canyon? Mm-hmm. Oh, they're not around anymore. It's too bad. Yeah. I had some friends that went there over in Pasadena, right?
Yes, and that wasn't by choice. I just ended up at Huntington Memorial.
Huntington Memorial, which we send people there for detox today. We do.
Yeah, right? And they just picked me up, and this place picked me up, and I ended up there, and it was the godsend. It was wonderful treatment, and I really got to work on what I needed to work on to go on and be a good mom and forgive myself.
Real quickly, I got to work on what I needed to work on. What was that?
Oh, it was...
what did you need to work on to be able to come out of there and stay sober?
I think forgiving my mother and father was a big thing. I held a grudge against them for what they did and some of the things that happened.
Did it make it because as a mom you went through some similar experiences that your own mother did?
Yeah.
Was it easier for you to then forgive your mom? Because that's my experience with my dad.
Yes.
Right? Is that I love my dad to death today, no matter what. Man, he's a wonderful human being, but I didn't always see that until I became him and didn't want to be. You know?
And I had a better understanding of them and that separating the disease from the person. Yeah. And writing letters to them and whatnot. So I needed to, the things I buried as a kid, I needed to bring back up.
Well, and that's the importance of talking to your kids, especially if you're in a family that has addiction. One of the many benefits of talking to your kids really young, truthfully about addiction, is that I wish to God when I was 6 years old that somebody would have said the word alcoholic to me.
Yeah.
Because I thought my dad was a monster. Right. I didn't know that it was two separate things. I didn't know that there's this beautiful human being with this disease. Right. And I wish somebody would have explained that to me. Yes. Right? Because then you can see mom as this beautiful human being who's got this thing. Right. And yourself, ultimately.
Right.
Right?
That's exactly what happened. I mean, I and that's one of the things I did with my kids, and I still do today. My 3 of my kids were younger, so their father never explained where I went. So it was like this unspoken thing. Why is it we're just going to go visit mom? So as they got older, I said, you have questions, let's talk about it. This is what happened, Yeah. And I was really open with them, and that was a good healing time for my kids and I. And so, it's interesting. My daughter, the one that's, was coming to my aid, is she moved out at 17 too because it was so chaotic with me. She escaped. Yeah, but she always got pulled back in. I'm not joking.
I'm not saying that's funny, but it's ironic.
But just like I did.
Of course.
Just like I did. And,
of course.
But
we start to see those family patterns, right?
Yes.
I couldn't wait to get out of that house.
She couldn't wait to get out, and she's got 4 kids of her own now, and she's so much like me. I don't want to be like this. I don't want to be like this, So.
Well, you have something important to say too, though, is that when drugs caught up to you, the genetic component of family history, bam, it was like boom, like it, but it's really important for us to understand that the changes that we make today and the recovery process and the communication that's different and the things that we do, that carries on to our kids too.
Yes.
The transparency in our communication
100%.
and all of that stuff. And so it's different now with your daughter.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
she's still got that stuff doesn't go away,
Yes.
right? But you have this other thing that you add in that says, okay, now I have these coping skills, and
Yes.
those are in my family history now
Yes.
too, right? So
Yes.
it's really cool. Yeah.
Yes.
So a couple of things. Thank you so much for coming
You're
on and
welcome. Thank
sharing
you.
yourself with our audience today.
Thank you for inviting me.
wonderful that people get to know that there's such a wonderful human being with such a wonderful experience working with the youth of our valley. That experience, how does that benefit you in working with the teenagers that come into our treatment center today?
Well, for me, it's when I was at their age, I didn't have anyone to talk to. So I like to give them a place that's safe and that they can open up and talk. And I think that's really important because they don't talk at home most of the time. And so I can share my experience as a teen with them and give them examples. We have open dialogue, we're transparent. Whatever they ask me, I will give them an answer to if I know it. And I just think we build a wonderful rapport to where they trust and they can come to me and say whatever they need to say.
What's neat about that is so Michelle will do that. You will do that in the smaller group settings with these teenagers. And the result is really obvious. Like they feel relief. But we also do that without ever saying to the kids, anything that you tell me is absolutely going to be a secret.
Right.
You're going to open up about that stuff and
Yes.
get honest about it. Now, how do we get you to be able to share that with your parents?
Right.
That's where our family treatment comes in because so the kids start to get better and they start to get that relief and they start to be able to talk openly with you. And the parents will see that.
Yes.
And they'll say something like, how come they can't do that with me at
Right.
home?
Right.
That's where I come in and I say, let's talk about why they can't do that with you at
Yes.
home. And so together, you and I get to teach the families how to create that same safe space.
Absolutely.
And at the end of the day, that is the solution. Is how can we create an environment where we can all talk openly about everything that's going on
Right.
in our lives without anybody screaming at each other
Yes.
or getting violent or shaming each other or punishing each other or any
Right.
of that stuff.
Right.
How do we get there, right?
Right. It's such a beautiful thing to watch too, as they grow, and our teens are able to say in our groups to the parents what they're feeling, and the parent just sits there and listens, and they start to open up about communication,
There is a, and you've been with us long enough to see this, but I've been watching it over the years because my style of working with parents, whether it's parents of adults or parents of kids, hasn't changed much. And there is a percentage that at this time in their life are not willing or ready to do the work, and they run.
Yes.
And they run, right? And it doesn't always look like they run. They go, like the time, we can't just make this time, whatever.
Yeah.
There's an excuse that your brain will say, I'm not ready to do that work.
Yeah.
And that's cool. That's
Yeah.
totally cool. But I have never, so I just want to put out there, the work that we do with the families is this. And if you're willing, if you want to change, you have to do this kind of work. You have to be brave enough or ready enough or even scared to death but walk through the door anyway enough for me to say to you or Michelle to say to you on maybe your very first group is that although you're here for your kid, the real work is not with your kid. That every individual sitting in this room is going to do personal work. And so let's start to explore the ways that you can change so that you can be a better person in every relationship that you have, including the one with your kid, right? And a lot of times parents go, wait a minute, I didn't know I was coming here to change me.
Right.
And yes, you're absolutely. We are all coming here to change ourselves.
Yes.
Everybody in this room
unit.
is here for themselves, right? And what's neat about that is that when I can take ownership of my mistakes, without holding the shame that I've been holding for that, then it becomes this environment where your child isn't blaming you for their stuff, and you're not blaming your child for your stuff.
Right.
Everybody takes ownership, and then and we watch it sometimes overnight.
Yes.
Is all of a sudden they come in and they go, things are different. Well, what's different? It feels safe at home now, right?
Yes.
It feels safe. And so you have started that ball rolling in your groups with our teenagers.
Right. Yeah, and that's what I try to do. I would just get them to open up and see what's really going on, And we do that through art. We do that through topics. We just come up with different worksheets, how we're feeling. Yeah. Sometimes it's not that easy for them to identify what they're feeling, so we do it in different ways.
Yeah. Well, you have to get creative with teenagers. There's it's a whole different ball game.
Yes.
With a lot of the young adults, and maybe especially the older adults, it's pretty. They come in going, okay, I'm done. I've been beaten enough. This thing's killing me, right? Teenagers don't come in like that.
No, kicking and
Teenagers
screaming.
come in going, I'm just getting started, and they think I have a problem, right?
They have the problem.
Yeah, right? And if you would just so I go like, okay, what's your goal for treatment? My goal is to get my mom off my back.
Right.
Okay, well, let's talk about, sure, let's achieve that goal.
Yes.
You can achieve that goal by changing your behavior,
exactly.
right? But they don't see it when they come in. I've hardly ever met a teenager who comes in and goes, I need to do something different in my life.
Right.
They come in and go, and everybody else thinks I need to do something different in my life. And so the approach is always going to be different. But once you provide that safe space, what I have found with every teenager I've ever worked with is that they're all dying for change in their life.
Yes.
They don't know what that looks like.
Yeah.
But once you get them to open up, what are some of the things that they start to say? Like, I'm tired of living this way? Or
Yeah. They say their parents don't listen to them. They don't hear them. They just yell at them. Yeah. They speak over them. So they'll just be quiet. They don't share what they feel because their parent gets mad at them when they share their true feelings.
Right. And it's got, and we get that.
Yeah.
By the time when somebody calls us, they're in crisis, which means that they've been in an environment for a long, long time already that has gotten deeper and deeper into this dynamic that nobody wants it like that.
Right.
And so we talk about that change. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to feel safe in your own home?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we help you create that.
Yeah.
Thanks for being on the show today, Michelle.
Thank you for having me, Bob.
Yeah, outstanding. We're gonna have to have you back and get into some more of these wonderful things that you're doing over at The Way Out. I'm honored to have you on today. You're a wonderful human being.
Thank you.
I appreciate you very much.
Thank you very much.
This is The Way Out Recovery Hour. I'm Bob Sheritz, and we will be back here next week. Thanks for listening, everyone.